Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of AKP Sports Talk. As always, I'm Ari here with Korea. We're here today, October 30th, Halloween Eve. We're almost into November, again, inching closer to college basketball. Another day of obviously NBA, college football. At least one more game in the World Series. We'll see if the Yankees can hold on one more game tonight. I'll get into the unfortunate recap of the Nuggets, who are and they won the game, but they're still bad. Like barely scrapping out back-to-back wins against the Raptors and then the Nets. Um, yeah, they were down 13 after the first quarter. So at that point, the first half play was basically dead, barring some huge miracle. And they did look better in the second quarter, scoring I think 36 points, but they gave up 32 after they gave up. I think they gave up 72 in the first half. So I mean, obviously the Nets have some good players on offense. Cam Thomas. But if you're a legitimate team, you're not getting up 70 points. In the first half to the Nets. Again, they won another crazy overtime game where they won by 5, and the line was for the full game was bouncing back and forth between 4.5 and 5.5. So you either got hooked for the win or you got hooked for the loss. If you took the Nuggets full game, when I saw them, when I took this play, when I saw them, they were at, I think it was 5.5. So even if I took the full game, I still would have lost by the hook. So if anything, I would rather have it lose quickly than have it lose by half a point, at the very end, obviously. But it doesn't matter, still a loss. So move on to today. We'll start off with you, Korea, with your next college basketball future. You had Indiana to win the Big Ten yesterday, and now we're moving on to a Big East future today.
Yeah, obviously, as you mentioned it, just going to a new conference now. It's a little chalky, but I feel like it's just going to be, rinse, repeat for this team. UConn to win the Big East here, plus 130. We know, obviously, they're coming off 2 national championship wins, and obviously they are, right now, I'd say the favorites to be winning a third in a row, but I want to see what their value is in terms of national championship as the season goes. Obviously, preseason, it gets a little, it's nice, but maybe UConn has a little bit of a shaky start. Odds go a little up in the favor. Who knows? But I'm just taking them to win the Big East here. I love them at plus 130. I know it's a little chalky, but bear with me when I explain here. I feel like I was saying yesterday, the Big Ten is is a conference where there's going to be a lot of contenders at the top, and I feel like the Big East this year, it's probably going to be top heavy, right? And I feel as if the two, I wouldn't say top heavy. Obviously St. John's is a great team. Kadary Richmond is a baller. We know Providence can always be a good team. Obviously Seton Hall as well. But I feel like if the two teams in this conference are going to be UConn and Creighton, I think UConn always has the edge there. I think the win for this UConn team in the offseason was bringing back Dan Hurley, right? Obviously, there was rumors of him going to the NBA, obviously becoming the head coach for the Lakers, but he turned those down, went back to Storrs, Connecticut to be obviously the head coach of the successful UConn men's basketball team. Obviously, great program there. And I think with his, developmental skills, I think he has another championship run for the Big East under his belt. You look at the talent they have this year, right? Solomon Ball, obviously, he's going to be inserted into that starting lineup. He's a baller. They brought in Mahaney from St. Mary's, who is a great two-way player as well. Also has great ball handling skills, in terms of on the court. We also know they have Jalen Stewart out of Seattle, obviously Garfield, so obviously 206 represent there. He's a great guy, obviously. He's just a little bit, with the injury bug, but I feel like maybe this year with, off the injury bug, maybe he needs a little bit help defensively, but I still feel like he's going to be a great factor for them. I think the biggest sneak for them is getting Liam McNeely, obviously. He was committed to Indiana, but then decommitted, then went to UConn, and I think that was the get for them this whole offseason in terms of transfer portal and signees. McNeely, obviously a great talent. We know, in terms of the top incoming freshman talent, him and Cooper Flagg are kind of up there. So for UConn to get McNeely, and they actually, they played together and they're pretty good friends and whatnot. And McNeely, he has that, energy and, in types of road game situations, where, you're going to need that kind of, swagger, that devil kind of mentality, just, the villain per se. And I think he brings that into a complete UConn team that also has Singare for size inside. I feel as if UConn is just the most complete team in this conference. You look at the success of Dan Hurley, right? We know that he is one of the best coaches in college basketball at just developing talent, right? At developing the talent, right? And I think he can really develop some of these key guys who are going to be coming off the bench, because the one thing about UConn is that people are going to be, drawing away from is the fact that they lost almost all of their talent last year. Obviously, they had that nice championship run, but Stephon Castle, obviously, to the draft. Cam Spencer, obviously, to the draft. Donovan Clingan, obviously, to the draft. They lost all those guys, right? And it's just hard to replace that. I think with the talent they had on the bench, I think what they brought in, I think it's going to be a great year for UConn again, especially in a really top-heavy conference like the Big East. Like I said, it's going to be them and Creighton, I'd say, at the top two. And I think Creighton, obviously, a great team. Obviously, they still have Kyle Burner inside, so one of the best defenders in all of college basketball. Obviously, a two-way in terms of his shooting ability as well, and just his ability to just steal boards off the glass. I really just love UConn in this spot. Obviously, they have Singari to match inside with the size, so I think that really takes out Kyle Burner. When you look at, the shooters that, this team has, obviously they have, a bunch of questions about, who really is going to be the key guy, but I really think that this UConn team, obviously with Dan Hurley coming back, I think that was the reason as to why I think this team is national championship favorites right now. But I'm just taking them to win the Big East here. We don't have to worry about anything that happens in March, only what happens from pretty much November to February here. And I love this UConn team again, just to dominate, win the Big East here. Very top heavy conference here. Like I said, I feel like in terms of the talent inside this conference, I feel like UConn has the best talent. Obviously, they're preseason number 3 in the country. So obviously the AP poll has a lot of respect for this team after all, they are the 2-time defending national champions, for God's sake. So I think they're just going to obviously they're going to be obviously be hunted in this situation. I think obviously that plays into what Dan Hurley loves. Obviously, he loves, to be the hunted, obviously, obviously after coming off of another Big East title last year, a championship win, obviously all the teams are going to be looking at UConn and saying, oh, we got to take them out. But I think UConn is going to be just another good team this year. Obviously, there's so much talent. I like teams like Xavier in this conference as well, as a sneaky outlier, but I just think UConn, the best talented team in the conference, is going to do another year of how they repeat. Once again, just with Dan Hurley coming back, I think that really is the difference maker because, like I said, Kimani Young, obviously the assistant coach, he's a great coach, right? But there is the big question, right? Is Dan Hurley going to go? Is Dan Hurley going to stay? And you can't replace that, right? It's hard just to replace, the way Hurley really developed his guys, right? You see it on the court, like they'd be up by 30, right? Dan Hurley is still yelling at his guys, right? Because of, the little mistakes or whatnot. And I think that's going to be playing evident, obviously, with the fact that most of those guys on the bench are going to be taking that starting role. It's not like it's going to be anything new for these guys, right? Maybe guys like Mahaney and all these new freshmen and newcomers, to the program, but it's still not going to be something new just in terms of the mentality of, wanting to succeed, right? And I just love this UConn team just to be another dominant team, another dominant year. They have Hurley back. They're just going to repeat. Obviously, everyone's talking about national championships, the three-peat. It's hard just because, March Madness is so hard to predict every year. But for now, I just like UConn to win their conference, win the Big East regular season title here, plus 130 on DraftKings. Like I said, I think they are the overwhelmingly big favorite for a reason. Obviously, they have Hurley. They have all the talent that they brought in, and obviously all the talent that they still had from last year on the bench. And it's not like they didn't have anyone. Obviously, they had guys like Hassan Diarra, who's going to be a big piece, or a big role, obviously, for this team. Obviously after all the guys like Cam Spencer and Stephon Castle left, it's just a new season with some newcomers and obviously some big names coming there, like Aiden Mahaney, obviously in the transfer portal. They also got the center from Michigan. I'm forgetting his name. I'm forgetting his name right now. I think it's Tears. But yeah, I think you look at this UConn team, right? Just the way that they just retooled their team. They still have Dan Hurley. I think they're an overwhelmingly big favorite to win the Big East for a reason. That's why I'm going to take them. Just take them, UConn, to win the Big East. At the end of the season, you're going to be seeing UConn like a 32-3 team, and you're like, well, yeah, that was probably the right call there. And so that's why I'm just going to take UConn to win the Big East here, plus 130. Pretty simple, I know, pretty chalk, but when you just look at this conference as a whole, like I said, pretty top heavy, and I like taking a pretty good team in a pretty top heavy conference. So that's why I'm taking UConn to win the Big East here, plus 130 here. Obviously, I'll have one more future out on Friday before the season tips off on Monday. Very exciting times here. But obviously, Ari, we got some more NBA. We got some more World Series action. We even got some college football tonight, and it's ugly tonight. But what do you like on this Wednesday?
Yeah, going back to the hardwood, taking the Knicks on the road as a short favorite over the Heat. Knicks 1-2 so far. Heat 2-1, but 2 wins haven't been that impressive against the Hornets and Pistons, where they won by 8 in both games, but they're close towards the end. Knicks coming off a tough loss at home against Cleveland. Obviously, the Knicks are the big story entering the season, following the additions of both Mikal Bridges and then Karl Anthony Towns. It's kind of weird because the Heat are usually known for defense, and in terms of points allowed, I think they're still up there in like a top 5 or top 10. But in terms of three pointers made allowed per game, they've allowed the 6th most threes per game. So there is a way to exploit their defense, because they try to just double the best player and get the ball out of their hands and make other guys beat you. And so this could not be more of an assist game for Brunson, like more of a passing assist game for Brunson. And the Knicks have plenty of shooters. I mean, obviously Mikal with his new shot, but he's been getting better after the first game. OG on the outside, Cat, Miles McBride. So they have plenty of shooters on the outside if Brunson gets doubled. So I mean, I think the Knicks are the better team, and I think they're a favorite on the road, for a reason here. And there's enough shooters from the outside for me with the Knicks to be able to exploit the biggest weakness for Miami so far this year defensively, which is, allowing threes. They like to collapse the paint, the Heat, a lot, and that just leads to guys being open on the outside. So the line, they go down a half a point from 2 to 1.5 for the Knicks, but not that big. They're still a favorite on the road. So I mean, I think it's going to be a close game. I mean, the Heat don't get blown out. They're in a lot of close games. They don't blow a lot of teams out either, just with how they played, in the regular season. But I like the Knicks to bounce back and get back on track. And again, it might not be a Brunson game just based on how the Heat schematically, defend teams and all that. But the Knicks have enough weapons on the outside to be able to take advantage of the Heat's weakness defensively against a 3-point shot.
Yeah, you mentioned obviously Heat like to be they've always been a very defensive team. Obviously, you mentioned they like to double their best player, opposing best player. Obviously, Jalen Brunson, kind of the star for New York. So maybe like a big Karl Anthony Towns type game, maybe inside, or with his shot, if he gets a shot going outside the perimeter. Maybe, as you said, OG Anunoby as well. If Mikal Bridges' shot is working now, maybe he has a big day. But you mentioned that. I like the Knicks here in the spot. Just on the road. It's going to be a tough environment for them. Obviously, going the Kaseya Center, obviously in Miami. But you mentioned Miami. They play hard. Obviously, they're going to be playing defensively. Obviously Spoelstra, we know one of the most the most historic coaches in terms of just defensive prowess and just limiting guys to go off against them. So I do like the Knicks here. Just get the money line here. Obviously, with just all the talent that they have. Obviously, as you mentioned, the line, I don't think basketball lines, they always fluctuate throughout the day. So, as you mentioned kind of yesterday, the Nuggets were 4.5, they went to 5.5. So, it's just in terms of where you get the best value. So it's just in terms of best value. Don't have to worry about that in terms of the spread. Just taking a team to win there, just taking the Knicks straight up on the money line. I do like that play for you. So just for today, Knicks on the money line for Ari, my future of the day, giving out UConn to win the Big East here. That's plus 130 on DraftKings. You can find both of these plays, of course, on our Twitter below, AKP Sports Talk. We will have both Ari's play and my future post momentarily. That's going to do it for this episode. Of course, as Ari mentioned, tomorrow is Halloween, and coincidentally, we have a spooky Thursday night game because why in the world are the Jets favored? Ari, that has to be the spookiest line I've seen. Like, of course, it's on Halloween. The Jets.
I mean, Stroud hasn't looked great without Collins. Now you have Diggs out too, so I think, and they're like a 2-point favorite, which is basically even on a neutral field essentially. So I think it's I don't know. It's a little weird, but Houston doesn't look great either. And now Diggs and Collins both out. So
Ari, the Jets lost to the Patriots. I don't want to hear nothing. I mean, any given day, that's true, but the Jets are well. We're gonna dive into that Thursday game, of course, tomorrow. Obviously, that's Ari. I'm Korea. We will see you guys tomorrow for the Thursday night game.